What's up, guys? This is Twilight. Today I'm going to be talking to you guys about beware of the self-sabotage demon. Normally I would have photos and videos to associate with the topic itself. But today I'm not going to do that because I feel like this is a very triggering and layered topic. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the oceanic views. Now, the first thing we want to grasp when we talk about bewaring of the self-sabotage demon is you have to look at this as part of your journey in spiritual growth. So, lonerwolf.com defines spiritual growth as the process of awakening to your true nature, purpose, and potential. When you undergo spiritual growth, you experience an expansion in awareness and insight, also known as higher consciousness. So, as this term suggests, as you are expanding in your awareness, you will have to release some things that you have outgrown. You will often have to let go of certain behaviors, mentalities, emotional reactions, thought processes that was once acceptable in your life, but as growth suggests, you have outgrown it. So it no longer fits you. Like a pair of pants when you were 8. Now that you're 16, obviously you can't fit those pair of pants anymore. I'm not talking about gaining weight or anything like that. I'm talking about actually outgrowing things. And this often happens as a process of unlearning. People think spiritual growth is all about meditation and nature and simply reading various different books on alternative wellness and healing. No, that's not necessarily the true core of spiritual growth. The true core of spiritual growth is unlearning mostly things that don't fit you. And this plays right into the ideology of the self-sabotage demon, or as I like to call it, the lurker, because it's not always present and apparent that something is lurking in the shadows of your consciousness that could potentially be holding you back from your truest nature, but it becomes very, very clear when you are attempting to rise to a certain level. For example, I've talked to you guys about this before, but it's an example that I think is really important to note because it is sincerely something that I myself have experienced and I gain a great deal of insight from. So part of my unlearning were some of the feedback that I got from other people. So people would tell me all the time, "You're aggressive." And the way that I would interpret that is that is something that is just undesirable and something about me that is just unacceptable. But the truth is, even then, seeing me as aggressive did not mean that I was unlovable. However, I internalized it that way. And I sort of had a hybrid feeling of shame about it and frustration. People also failed to mention, as I learned later on, their own fragility and their own feelings of being easily triggered. So I was aggressive, or at least more aggressive, when I was desperately needing other people's approval and validation. Aggressiveness in its healthiest form is assertiveness. See, there is a difference between forcing yourself on others and standing strong in your convictions and things that matter to you. So I became assertive when I realized that the only true validation I needed was my own. And seriously, guys, I had to cultivate a very internally wealthy world, because every time I looked outwardly, no one was able to fulfill my emotional needs that deeply the way I needed them to. The validation that I was looking for and the expectations that I had of other people's feedback towards me were creating unhealthy attachments to their opinions. Now, for some, that might sound cliche or even like a bunch of bullshit, but it is not. I had to really, truly get in tune with myself. And so many of us, due to social media, reality TV shows, feelings of inadequacy that has went unchecked, feelings of inferiority that has went unchecked, feelings of not feeling worthy that has went unchecked. We walk around very, very self-conscious, as I've mentioned many times before, as opposed to being soul conscious. And so if we were more concerned as people about our soul than where we stood in proximity to our peers, we would have a healthier sense of self. But since culture is constantly changing and getting more ratchet, if I do say so myself, most people are going to find themselves not truly meeting the criteria of the outside world, which will in turn make them feel like they're not good enough if they're looking for feedback from the outside world. So you really have to own your self-esteem in a world like this, because no one, and I mean absolutely no fucking body, is going to give you the appropriate self-esteem cues. So when it comes to self-sabotage and our unlikely troll or lurker, the self-sabotage demon, what is nestled at the core of that is a thought process of, I am not good enough, I am not worthy, wounded inner child, or heavy critic, or we're clinging to coping mechanisms that no longer serve us. And so when we attempt to do something that calls us to a higher level, we're being slung back almost like a boomerang to looking at and exposing these core limiting beliefs that we have avoided continuously. Now a person will say, well, listen, I'm 45 years old. What the hell am I going to do with that information? How is it going to help me to look back when I was 12 years old and my teacher or my authority figures or someone told me that I was not good enough? I have other responsibilities. I have things that I have to do. How is this going to help me, Twilight? What I am saying to you is really important here. You may think that I'm 45 or I'm 37 or I'm whatever age and I just need to keep moving forward because life is demanding that of me. What I am telling you is you will not be able to move forward, because as surely as you are attempting to do something great, amazing, or outside of your comfort zone, oftentimes that program in your mind will kick in just to validate itself. As your spirit is growing, your ego is fighting for survival in your experience. It wants to continue to live and be validated in your life. And what people begin to understand is it's not so much that the ego just needs to be destroyed. It's the fact that we have made the ego the boss and the spirit the subordinate, when it's the other way around. The spirit is the boss and the ego is the subordinate. However, the ego is a subordinate that is often extremely loud, wants to be in control, wants to be in charge, and will do what it has to do to remind you of its existence. But here is what I am here to tell you. If you want to move forward and stop cycling through the same problems over and over again, the same cycles over and over again, it's not always a matter of strategy or getting on a grind or getting this money. It's more so a strategy of fixating the focus on healing those parts of you that no longer serve you, that need your attention, that are not a vibrational match for the direction that you are going. So in essence, this self-sabotage demon is somewhat of a good thing if you can step back and look at it objectively and say to yourself, okay, even though these emotions are uncomfortable, even though I don't like addressing this, even though I don't like remembering the checkered or shattered or unhappy childhood I have, looking back and telling that little boy or that little girl that they matter, that what they needed was important, that they weren't responsible for, I'm just giving you an example. They weren't responsible for the behaviors of their parents, and they did nothing to deserve the trauma that they experienced. Doing that type of validation work for yourself is what I mentioned earlier, helps you to cultivate a healthy inner world that stops you from being so thirsty for validation from the outside world. Okay? And then you begin to realize your self-worth and unlearn certain habits and behaviors that was once useful and are no longer useful anymore. Now, two unconventional methods of self-sabotage is an unhealthy attachment to being positive. Now, in the spiritual world, we're always talking about good vibes only, positivity, etc., etc., etc. But some people end up wearing a mask, and that mask is, I'm nice. I'm a nice person. Now, many people are starting to realize the effects of spiritual bypassing. People who spiritual bypass tend to not want to feel uncomfortable emotions. They're basically people who avoid shadow work, deep intrinsic shadow work. Okay. So they put on this exterior front of constantly being nice, constantly being friendly, when in actuality, they are searing with anger on the inside, resentment and emotions that they wish not to address. And that is what is making them extremely passive aggressive. Okay. So they generally tend to try to do meditation and things of that ilk to disassociate from negative energy instead of transmuting it. They simply do not want to feel those feelings. And a lot of times those feelings contain very valuable information inside of them. So as I spoke about, going ahead, healing your wounded inner child, there's various different techniques to do that, which you can definitely, research it, enlist the assistance of a life coach, etc. But I want you to be aware of how pertinent and important recognizing the self-sabotage demon that is often lurking when you're in your spiritual growth process. The most important thing is to be gentle with yourself during these times. Don't beat yourself up. Feeling shame, feeling embarrassed, again, cultivate a safe space for yourself. In addition to that, know that these programs often are still going to be somewhere on the inside, and you just have to be aware of them when you are triggered and when they come up. But doing this type of inner work is going to prove to be extremely useful for you no matter what age you are and no matter what stage you are in your life. We all have to do this type of shadow work if we truly wish to expand. This is Twilight saying peace, healing, love yourself.